Thank you very much to our panelists. We really appreciate you taking the time to be here today and sharing this wonderful information. And thanks those of you that are participating. Uh, as you know, we're kind of kicking into high gear here with our what quote regularly scheduled programming in terms of the world of economic development. And while we're still dealing with items related to the pandemic, it looks like we're heading in the right direction. And the Opportunity Zone program is a really powerful tool for investors. And Riverside County has 49 census tracts stretching from the very far west end of the county and Riverside, Corona, all the way to the eastern portion of the county at the Arizona border in Blythe area. And so this presents a tremendous amount of opportunity, but there's nuances and requirements and so forth that come with the program. And we've got a panel of experts here today to share some great information. And thank you again to our panelists for taking the time to do this. And Stacy, thanks for all the hard work. You really deserve the bulk of the credit here. You've put this information together and our right hand in the Opportunity Zone program. And so you deserve the credit. You did all the work to put this together. So thank you very much for that. I will share with you that if you want much more detailed information about opportunity zones in Riverside County, you can go to our website at rivcooz.com, and I will put that in the Q&A so that you have that link and of course our contact information. So without further ado, I will turn it back to you, Stacy, and we'll kick it off. And thank you again.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rob, and thanks to the County of Riverside for putting forward all this effort and welcoming everyone into this event. Because we have the third highest number of opportunity zones in the state, this has been a high priority for us, and we're doing everything we can to get the word out about the great locations we have, the incentives, and really make sure that businesses as well know how to utilize the tool. So I'll turn it over to our panelists now to kick off some introductions so you can get an idea of who we'll be hearing from. Let me turn it over first to Patrick. You want to kick us off with an introduction?
Absolutely. Patrick Mullen here from Arcturus Impact Investors. We're a nationwide impact investing fund based in Boston, but with offices located across the country, including Washington, D.C., New York, Detroit, Chicago, and Salt Lake City. We recently launched a nationwide RFP inviting communities to apply with creative kind of local match capital, whether that's coming from the economic development sector, philanthropic sector, or other kind of areas to kind of catalyze local investment programs that come from our nationwide fund. So very happy to be here. Stacy, sorry, I should know, are we doing quick introductions around the horn, or would you like me to share a few slides here?
Around the horn is good. I'll definitely make more time for you as well, but let's go to Steve just to do a quick introduction as well.
Yeah, thanks, Stacy. My name is Steve Schmall. I'm a director in KPMG's Washington National Tax Practice, and I spend a great deal of time dealing with the federal tax nuts and bolts of investing in qualified opportunity zones and making sure you maintain a quote unquote good investment in your qualified opportunity zone.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Steve.
Thanks.
Michael, I'll turn it over to you for an introduction. We're going to ask you to unmute for a sec, Mike.
My apologies. Can you hear me now?
Good.
Can you hear me now?
Good to go. Good to go.
Okay. Sorry. Michael Ocasio, Small Business Development Corporation of Orange County. We're one of 7 financial development corporations in the state that reside under the California Infrastructure and Economic Development Bank, located within the Small Business Finance Center within the state of California. We basically leverage public dollars to support economic development projects. As I said, there's 7 of us in the state. We're all 501c3s, quasi-public-private organizations. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much, Mike, for joining. And last but certainly not least, Trey Bradley, do you want to give us an introduction as well?
Thank you, Stacy, and thank you for the introduction and for inviting me along to join this great group of presenters today. So really happy to be here and discuss opportunity zones. My name is Traylon Bradley, and I am a senior business development specialist located within the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development here in Southern California. I manage much of our place-based strategy and programs within GoBiz, so inclusive of opportunity zones, promise zones, tax increment financing districts, and other kind of place-based tools to support economic and community development in California. So really excited for today, and thank you again, Stacy.
Thanks so much, Trey, for joining us. Really a credit to the support that we've been receiving from the state of California around this program. So thank you as well. Before we kick into the investor segment of how to qualify for funding, what they look for, et cetera, I thought it'd be good to at least table set a bit and do a quick 101. There's been a lot of talk about opportunity zones from the real estate point of view. However, this has been turning more and more to the business side. Over the past 2 years, we've seen it grow from about 10% investments in businesses to up to about 32% investments in businesses, according to the last statistics that we received. So this is more of a topic, but we want to make sure that folks have some context in terms of how it can be utilized. So if you'll give me a moment, I'll share my screen and just do a quick 101 before I turn it over to who you really want to hear from on the investor side. So we'll do a quick 101, just a table set of how opportunity zones investments can be utilized for businesses, and what are the benefits for business owners or folks that aspire to be business owners in opportunity zones. First is going to be the additional access to capital. What the opportunity zone incentive has really done is it's created a triggering effect that there is now a new path of capital that folks can access, in addition to, for example, venture capital funding or private equity funding. Opportunity zone capital is triggered by a tax event, whether that be the sale of cryptocurrency, the sale of real estate, the sale of a business. Any capital gain event can trigger for funding for an opportunity zone investment into a qualified opportunity zone fund as a mechanism. But it really creates now a place-based incentive to invest in certain census tracts, whereas other investment mechanisms don't necessarily have that place-based attachment with the same timeframes that that opportunity zone investments have. Again, we have 49 census tracts here in Riverside County. So from the east to the west side, there's quite a bit of variety in terms of geography and businesses that have access to the incentive. The second thing is there is incentives that are being aligned at the federal level. And if there's anyone off of mute right now, I'll just ask that everyone go on mute, please. I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Thank you. But there are incentives at the federal level, even in addition to anything that investor capital may have, where there are preference points and priority consideration for federal grants and programs that are being aligned to opportunity zones. So when I first started in this position, there were about 200 programs that were aligned to opportunity zones, meaning that there were preference points, the applications were weighted higher, or there was priority considerations where it was moved to the front of the line. To date, there's close to about 400, and that's been over a year's period. So that just really speaks to the alignment between different programs and that layering effect that can happen with grants alongside of investment capital that now is going to be benefiting opportunity zone designated census tracts. And the last thing is that there are other incentives that are now going to be available to business owners because we're looking at place-based incentives. Things like hub zones, where there are businesses that may have a federal contracting arm to their business. If they're in an opportunity zone, there's really good alignment there where they typically can have preference points for that. The foreign trade zones typically align really well with opportunity zones as well, in addition to new market tax credits. For example, in our area, we have 49 opportunity zones. 44 of our hub zones align and overlay with that. Of our foreign trade zones, I believe 11 of the 14 overlay with that. So there's going to be a layering effect of not only other place-based incentives, but grants and federal programs and capital that businesses would now have access to be eligible for if they were to consider moving into one of these census tracts or expanding into one of these census tracts. So that being benefits, what does an ideal deal look like? And I know Steve will go more into this, but I'll give just some basic requirements on the business side, separate to what some context might be for practical application. So First thing is be in an opportunity zone census tract. Rob mentioned the Riverside County website earlier, which is rivcooz.com, and you can see an interactive map there where you can put in addresses, APN numbers, or census tracts to actually see if you're in an opportunity zone within our county. The second is 70% of tangible property must be within a zone. So the actual business must be within a zone, 70% of property owned or leased. 50% of income earned actively must be within that zone, and 40% of intangible property must also be in the zone. So there really is an effort to make sure that there's more economic activity happening within the zones, and those are the basic requirements on the IRS standpoint in terms of what's going to be needed. There's additional qualifications in terms of non-qualified financial property and SIN businesses, and Steve will go more into that, but these are the checklists of what's going to be looked at. If there is a startup or a business that's moving into a zone, it can be relatively straightforward to qualify and meet these requirements. For businesses that are currently located in the zone, we definitely want to pull in a CPA, an attorney, to make sure that everything really checks the box. Regardless, a CPA and an attorney is needed in these transactions because it is very tax law heavy, and we want to make sure that there's compliance across the board. Practically, aside from the IRS requirements, when you're actually seeking capital, the questions are going to become, from an investor standpoint, is the business investable? And this is going to vary from investor to investor, but they would have their own criteria in terms of what's their investment thesis, what is their industry sector, et cetera, that they'd be looking for. And that varies. However, what typically a business owner would need to be able to answer is, what is the exit strategy? Is there a 5 to 10 year exit strategy to obviously repay that investment and any share of profits over time to recoup the investor? And they're also going to be asking, if your business isn't in an opportunity zone, can it be relocated there? You may have an attractive business that's seeking capital and may not have been considering opportunity zone capital, but that would be ideal to say, I want to align into an opportunity zone because there's other benefits. I can create jobs or gain access to grants or to other programs. And I relocate and have access to both capital and other resources while providing benefits to the community. So that's a question that's going to be asked and answered there. And the last is, can the business continue to meet the tests over the life of the investment? So not only at the time of the investment, but over that 5 to 10 year period as well. Those are things that businesses should be considering at a very practical level. And I know Patrick and Steve both will go more into that. So I'll leave that to them. Just a few examples that we're seeing nationwide, businesses that are receiving fundings from small to large. We have EV infrastructure companies on the small side. We have Second Chances Farm, who will be joining us on our panel next week in our series to share how they were able to raise over $2 million for an indoor agricultural farm. There are manufacturing companies that are raising opportunity zone funding. And on the larger side, there are acquisitions happening with opportunity zone funds. So these are things that people are seeing from the small to the large. There really isn't a size requirement in terms of the size of the business, but more so the growth rate of the business and the potential for return to the investor. One thing that's really interesting that's happening as well is when we're talking about capital gain events that would trigger an investment, the recent gains in the crypto market or even GameStop, for example, that can be a potential investor because that would effectively have created capital gains that would need to potentially have some sort of tax event. So those are things businesses should be thinking of when they're considering opportunity zones as a potential to raise capital for their business to grow. We do want to continue to support businesses in the county. So we're having our second event on next Wednesday at 1 p.m. This will be from a founder's perspective. So we're inviting founders who have and are currently raising in opportunity zones to join our panel. We'd encourage you to sign up. The sign up is at rivcoinnovation.org. You can also get more information on any opportunity zone maps, incentives, et cetera, from the county side at rivcooz.com. And I'll leave my information. I'm happy to lead the Opportunity Zone initiatives for Riverside County alongside the county at Opportunity Riverside. And personally, my company is blendedimpact.com, where we run accelerators, programs, and work alongside economic development to encourage growth in entrepreneurship and economic development overall. So happy to continue the conversation. Please do feel free to join us on our website and submit any questions there. But I'll stop sharing because this is the perfect point now to turn it over to the actual investor in the group. And I'll invite Patrick to speak now on how his fund invests, what they typically are looking for, and examples of deals so folks can really get a feel for things.
Perfect. Thank you, Stacy. No, I appreciate the chance to be here with you all, and certainly look forward to the dialogue as we progress. I am also going to share my screen right now and move into a presentation. I promise it's a quick presentation. Just moving to full screen mode. And hopefully everyone can see this. I'm just making sure I'm getting a thumbs up from Stacy. But first, just to tell you a little bit about kind of Arcturus at a glance. We've been around as an organization since 2009. We're growing our national footprint, both in terms of investment and investment models that we have from across the country. What we're working on right now is really managing 2 active funds. There's 6 historically that you'll see here, but our 2 flagship funds that are active today are, one is a credit fund. It's called the Arcturus Impact Fund. It's exclusively focused on low-income communities. It manages a lot of bank capital through a mandate called the Community Reinvestment Act. The other is obviously our flagship Opportunity Zone Fund, which currently sits at around just over $200 million in assets under management. And we're one of the few funds that is prioritizing investing in operating businesses in addition to real estate and in addition to infrastructure. The other kind of figure I want to note here that I think is very unique to the way that we're structured is you'll see that it says there's currently more than $30 million of principal protection and guarantees for our Opportunity Zone funds. What we mean by that kind of alludes to the fact that I made earlier in my introduction. We really seek to partner with communities, and by partnering with communities, we're often trying to bring in other parts of the capital stack, whether it be public dollars from local city, county, or state partners, whether it be philanthropic dollars from foundations or others that are seeking to make investments to support the community development that we're going after. And it's really a model that we pioneered back in 2013 on the heels of the Great Recession. And it was done through an initiative that Treasury created called the State Small Business Credit Initiative, or SSBCI, which there now will be around 2 of for more of our lending fund. But as we moved into the world of Opportunity Zones, we realized that a lot of communities that were out there were kind of getting frustrated with the zones that they had, because they were saying, look, these are intended to bring investors into our community. We're still hearing the same problems. Like, we're still hearing that the deals aren't investable. There's not enough de-risking. There's not enough of kind of local alignment with what's going on. So by really partnering with the communities to say, look, we'll bring, call it 80% of the capital that your region needs. If it's a $30 million investment program to go into operating businesses and affordable housing and things like broadband, we'll bring 80% of that and we'll invest in it. What we're looking for is to find 20% in kind of the mode of de-risking or matching capital. And that can take the form of many things. It can be guarantees, which, we were awarded one through a competitive RFP from the Kresge Foundation at the nationwide level. It can be local investment from things like Section 108 loans from HUD or community development block grants. In some cases, we've had entire states like the state of Maine step up and say, look, we want you to come to Maine. We want you to invest in our businesses here. But in order to do so, we recognize that we need to make a credit facility available to help de-risk the investments and really align everybody's interests. And so it's really a unique model where we think of ourselves as the intersection of kind of public, private equity, if you will, and trying to find ways to meet communities where they're at. One of the things I think I heard Stacy allude to is that, there's a real broad use case of what can be invested in from Opportunity Zones. I think for us, in our operating business investments, we tend to focus on manufacturing, business services, and then kind of core consumer and healthcare pillars that are really critical to the communities. We do a lot in the worlds of infrastructure and real estate. I think that's maybe a little less pertinent to today's conversation, but I do, will address that certainly is part of our portfolio in the OZ fund. And some of the stuff that we look for, as we see how does this work and how do you really make a deal work for an Opportunity Zone fund, we're getting into things that for our investors, they say, look, we're going to care about things like targeted early distribution. So if you're going into a operating business investment, are there ways in which you can pass benefits on to us as investors? Are they things like dividends? Are they things like income streams through depreciation recapture if you're investing in a physical asset? Are there kind of ways that you could kind of make the time period from today And 10 plus years from now, to go back to the timeline that Stacy alluded to, how do you figure out ways to kind of make those returns work over time? So as we're looking at investing in businesses, those are some of the criteria that we use. And then I think we get really creative as it pertains to capital distributions. And there's something I want to hit on. I won't go into the boring financial details of it, but one of the things we see quite a bit in the world of investing in operating businesses is this idea of using qualified small business stock, or QSBS. So I don't want to add another acronym that starts with the letter Q to what I'm sure is tons in the world of qualified opportunity zones. But QSBS exemptions allow us to really come into a business investment and say, look, if this company grows like wildfire and there's an exit that comes before 10 years, that's all right, as long as we've structured this in a way where it's using qualified small business stock, because it's another incentive the federal government has made available so that we maintain those tax benefits while also helping the business grow and potentially align ourselves better with the outcome of where the company is going. We're not trying to make ourselves beholden to a company and say, you now can't exit until 10 years. You have to be, restricted by these draconian tax measures. We can be flexible as we go into it. And then certainly, I think the elephant in the room is we're always thinking about what our liquidity is and how we align it with the opportunity zone life cycle. So it's really hard for us, and I'll just be candid about it. I think it's really hard for us to be a true early stage venture capital investor. I think the risk profile of that type of investment doesn't align itself very well with the opportunity zone incentives. That being said, things like qualified small business stock, things like the first loss capital that we're bringing to the table, and things like, other distribution streams that we could add on to it help mitigate that and help kind of allow us to go further downstream. So moving just onto this last slide here, one of the things we think is unique kind of about what we do in the capital structure is, we really seek to bring in different types of capital, and it's not just financial capital. It's things like grants that are pertained to economic development or job creation from local government partners. It's partnering with folks like the Economic Development Administration, or the EDA at the federal level, who just got awarded 10 times their annual budget in the American Rescue Plan Act. It's $3 billion they have to deploy over the next 3 years. And there's models in which we think that capital can really de-risk investments where the private sector could be very helpful from our perspective. Grants are a big one. I didn't mention tax credits, but we certainly look at that in more of our real estate investments. And there's just a lot more that, traditionally you kind of see funds say it's just going to be equity, it's just going to be debt. We kind of look at it as much more of a broader canvas, where we would really say, how do we utilize all of the tools that are at our kind of toolkit so that we can make these types of investments really happen. So just real quick, the last thing I'll do, and I'm trying to exit, and it never works for me on Zoom when I try to exit full screen mode on screen share, but I don't have to pull it up. I was just going to pull up a cool picture of an actual operating business investment we made. It's in Detroit, Michigan. It's actually more specifically in an area called Clinton Township. It's in a business called Recaro, which is a high-end automotive seat manufacturing business. And the problem that this Clinton Township was having is that it's an extremely low-income area. Recaro was a massive employer to the area. They had an eye on expanding their factory and really doubling down on that. Shortly before the pandemic, its parent company, which was actually a combination of German and Japanese multinational companies that owned it, decided they were going to move the whole thing overseas. And it meant a devastating loss of jobs to this business. And they really kind of put themselves on the sale block, saying, who wants to buy the North American arm of our manufacturing? And several deals fell through. It was kind of too risky for a fund to take on. So we partnered with the mayor and with some city local leadership to bring various different types of capital together, and actually ended up buying the North American arm of Recaro in February of last year. It saved 188 jobs at the time, and it's something that we have an eye on growing that job footprint to around 360 over the next 2 years. We're looking at building an additional factory using OZ capital and using those dollars. So it really is a good example of, I think, a business that was really struggling to find a way to survive, but was a high quality manufacturing business that mattered to the community that we were able to step in and buy using our OZ fund. So I just wanted to use that as an example to say we are actually out there doing this. We are investing in some of these companies, and I certainly look forward to the Q&A as it comes to be. So I'll stop sharing there, and hopefully I didn't go too long-winded, Stacy, but really appreciate the time and look forward to hearing from the rest of our panel.
Thank you so much, Patrick. And I really want to underscore what you've said, because I think you're a bit modest. I see, different press releases from your firm almost every other week speaking to investments, both business and otherwise, that you all are making, from grocery stores in Baltimore to broadband in Pennsylvania to reopening ski lodges to affordable housing. I mean, you really are versatile. And that is part of why I think you alluded to the RFP that you all issued last summer. Riverside County did apply to that RFP. We are currently in process with Arcturus, and they're one of the investors that we're actively trying to bring to this region. So this is something that we're very excited about, because we appreciate the versatility, and we're thankful for your partnership. So now that we have a little bit of context about how investors are looking at this, I think it'd be helpful to go to you next, Steve, to talk about how businesses can qualify, what you're seeing in the market, and any updates you want to share. So please feel free.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Again, my name is Steve Schmall. I'm a director with KPMG's National Tax Practice, and I spend quite a lot of my time focused on the Qualified Opportunity Zone practice. And I mean, segueing from what Patrick talked about, in my experience, we've seen two really different types of investments in businesses in the marketplace. I think I'm going to skip to the second one first, because I think that segues better from what Patrick was talking about, the external investment. So you have a company that has a business with material operations in a qualified opportunity zone. And the idea is that you find a third party investor, such as Patrick's fund, to invest in the business. So you could, like he was talking about his example, but you have another example could be a solar developer could pair QOZ benefits with renewable energy tax benefits for solar projects and potentially raise additional tax equity financing. I think what's interesting is that you could also do this completely on an internal basis. You could have a large company that has third-party capital gains, and they want to reinvest those gains rather than just paying the tax on them. And they could, if they have operations that they're already expecting to do, they could still hive off the QOZ portion of those operations as opposed to the non-QOZ portion, and invest their capital gains in that QOZ portion and retain the benefits. So the point being is that it's not only third-party investment that could benefit from the QOZs. You can also do it on your own business if you have your own capital gains. And then just relatively quickly, as Stacy was talking about the compliance requirements for QOZBs, there are 4 quantitative tests and 1 big qualitative test, and I'll go over them relatively quickly. There's a 70% property test, a 50% gross income test, which a question came in, and I'll address that. A 40% intangible property use test, which is relatively easy to satisfy. And then a 5% non-qualified financial property test, which is basically to prevent you from investing in Apple stock in your QOZB and benefiting from the appreciation in Apple stock. And then, of course, you have to have a trader business that's not a sin business. So you can see the list: golf course, country club, massage parlor, hot tub, suntan, racetrack, casino, alcohol. Interestingly, hemp business, or I guess in states where marijuana has been legalized, marijuana businesses are not a sin business for this purpose, which I always find interesting. So the 70, just again quickly, the 70% tangible property test says that for the QOZB, the business that you're investing in, substantially all, which is means 70%, needs to be in good tangible property. And that has to be tangible property that's acquired from an unrelated party. But there are 2 interesting points about this test. One is that to the extent that your property is treated as inventory, you can exclude it from your tangible property test. So if you have a QOZ business, for example, that's headquartered in a QOZ, but your warehouse might happen to be outside of a QOZ, you can exclude that inventory from your tangible property test and still satisfy the requirements for the tangible property test, even though all your property is outside of the QOZ. If it's inventory that you're buying and selling for resale, you're good. The second test is the 50% gross income test. And to the question that came in, there are 3 safe harbors that, in my view, don't really relate to gross income. There are 2 that are pretty similar. The first is that the hours of services spent, more than 50% of which are performed in the QOZ. And the second is the compensation for those services. At least 50% is performed within a QOZ. So at least 50% of the compensation you pay is for services performed within a QOZ. I mean, neither of those really look at the gross income of the QOZ, if you ask me. And then there's the third test, which is the hybrid. And that says that the intelligence of the management and the tangible property also located in the QOZs are each necessary to generate 50% of the QOZB's gross income. So that's a lot to unpack in a sentence. But again, the point is that you don't just look at your gross income and say, well, 50% is sourced outside of a QOZ, so I can't do it. It's not going to work. You've got to really dig into these 3 safe harbors. There's in the 40% test for intangible property, any intangibles that you hold in the QOZB have to be used at least 40% in the active conduct of the trade or business of the QOZ. Usually we see this as all or nothing, to be honest. So this test doesn't generally present a problem. And then there's the last test that says you can't hold cash or cash equivalents that are greater than 5% of your total assets. But there's a large exception to this cash or cash equivalents test that says that if it's working capital, there's a working capital safe harbor. And before I get into the safe harbor, I'll just say that if it's working capital, it's okay. But then there's a safe harbor that says that even if it's working capital, you have at least 31 months to expend that working capital within the QOZB. If it's a startup business, you have 62 months. And if you have a working capital safe harbor plan in place, which is a relatively simple document to draft, you have an additional 24 months. So if you have a startup business, which is not defined in the regulations, so no one really knows what startup business means, you have 62 months plus 24 months. So you have 86 months before this non-qualified financial property test kicks in. So that's what, 7 years plus 2 months. So it's not the most tough. It's not the toughest test to pass, if that makes sense. And I think that's it for the moment, Stacy. I'll come back. I can come back to some of the COVID relief, but most of those deadlines have already passed. Awesome. They passed on March 31st. So.
No, thank you so much, Steve. And I think, your section really underscores why a CPA, a qualified accountant that's knowledgeable about OZs really needs to be involved in all of these transactions, because at first glance, you think, okay, the test says this, it means I don't qualify. But you really can dig into it and see where there's exceptions and safe harbors that that businesses perhaps can qualify and utilize the investment for growth.
Exactly. And it can cut both ways, but there are definitely ways that it cuts in favor of investing in QOZs.
Okay, we're definitely going to come back to you, but I do want to go to Michael next. I know you have some exciting programs. You're based right here in our region, and you have some programs that can help businesses even outside of qualified opportunity zone funds investment in an opportunity zone. So I'd love to turn it over to you, Michael, to share how your programs can help as well.
Well, that's correct, Stacy. Thank you. Let me just reference where we're located. I mean, we're in the county seat of Santa Ana, out in Orange County, but I am a resident, a longtime resident of the Inland Empire. So I'm quite familiar with both Riverside and San Bernardino counties, and I do a lot of work in this region as well. Our program, here's how it basically comes into play. We're part of the California Infrastructure Bank, or what we call the iBank. And with iBank, for your participants who are not familiar with California's Infrastructure Bank, is California's municipal bank. So it issues bonds, it guarantees bonds, it provides public works, finances public works projects, that sort of thing. But within its Small Business Finance Center, they have capital access programs that support economic development. And we look at opportunity zones as economic development opportunities where we can provide a credit guarantee to a project that is creating jobs, retaining employment, providing a public benefit, maybe increasing the county or region tax base, those types of things, where our guarantees are up to $1 million, which soon to be, we think we're going to increase back to our old limits of 2.5 million very shortly, due to some federal funding that our program is receiving. But we support economic development projects within opportunity zones, project areas, and communities of greater need. So with respect to opportunity zones, I think with the rising interest of tax rates Biden is proposing, cap gains is all of a sudden becomes full focus for a lot of investors, and lenders understand that. And by the way, our guarantees extend to not only commercial banks, but also non-bank entities, community development financial institutions, or CDFIs. Also nonprofits or projects are able to be guaranteed with regard to our program. Our involvement, if you will, in the sort of capital debt equity stack is that if you have a project that's highly leveraged, or a lender is looking for a certain loan to value, we can issue a credit guarantee to that lender up to $1 million to support the project. And it also serves as the equity injection, if you will, into that project, if it's creating some sort of economic impact to the state. As I said, i.e. creating jobs, retaining jobs, which is California's focus at the moment. This helps the lender reduce and helps the investor buy down the risk of the funding that it might be seeking through a lender. And I'd be hard pressed to come up with a financial institution in the state of California that's not already involved in California's guarantee program. So that's sort of how we fit. I mean, if you're a developer and you're in that pre-development stage, you're going through the entitlement process, this is probably a good opportunity to look at a credit guarantee, if you will, to support the project.
Amazing. Thank you, Michael. And this is huge for businesses that are creating, that larger footprint, not just capital into their business, but capital into an actual physical location that's going to house more employees, that's going to bring jobs to the region. It's huge. And it just goes back to Patrick's point in terms of that capital between equity and debt, and then layering the two.
Yes, and that's important to mention because this program has been around since the late 60s. It's probably one of California's oldest economic development programs within state government. That's how long it's been around. I'll just give you an idea how large the program is. Last year, fiscal 1920, the combined economic development organizations issued something along the line of 4,700 guarantees for let's see how much, probably $240 million in loan guarantees, supported 15,000 jobs, or created 15,000 jobs and retained 15,000 jobs in the state, which also helped provide over $300 million in total project investment in these types of projects.
Huge. We definitely want to make sure our businesses, huge. We want to make sure our businesses take advantage of you. You're here now and able to guarantee now. So we wanted to make sure that folks knew about you and your offer. I think this is the perfect segue into Trey with the state of California, as there are more programs that come out of the state that works really, really well with opportunity zones. Trey, if I can turn it over to you, I'm sure you can share more in terms of what credits, programs, and et cetera might be available for businesses and opportunity zones that they can utilize now.
Thank you, Stacy. And you're able to see my screen? Great, awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for the intro, Stacy. I am going to I do have 17 slides here, but I'm going to go relatively fast through some of them and then cut off because I think it's great to do some questions. And of course, I'll be providing this presentation to Stacy for distribution to all the attendees so that if there's any specific questions, my phone number is on here and my email is on here. So feel free to reach out to me at any time. Whoops. So really, GoBiz, the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, we are the state point of contact for business and economic development assistance, both to economic development organizations and managers within the state of California, but then also to businesses. So we offer tailored consultation, free site selection service, incentive navigation, permit assistance, international trade and affairs, so export-import assistance. And then, of course, we also offer assistance on place-based tools, including opportunity zones, tax increment financing tools, and promise zones. And we'll get a little bit of that today in the presentation. So really, this is the landing page, and I shared this first. The first place you ever want to go when you think about GoBiz and incentives is business.ca.gov. And I pulled down the drop down for industries here just to see some of the highlights of the industries. You go to these pages, it just gets you straight to the point of here are the different incentive programs that you can utilize within the state of California within this industry. You can see there's no pages on here related to different government agencies or, you know, parts of our office. We're really here for the customer and the customer interface. So that is for you, the business, and our economic development partners, which is the Advantages Peach, which includes small business. So there's a lot of different resources for small business as well, which I will dive into here. So I know that a lot of people have small business at the front of mind, considering we have just processed so many small business grants within the state of California. And so I really want to say that here is to the point to, you know, to direct small business related inquiries to our Office of Small Business Advocate, which is a resource arm of GoBiz formulated specifically for small businesses, to be a conduit to small business development network centers, state resources, general questions about being able to find different training and technical assistance opportunities for small businesses. So through the business.ca.gov page, I included the drop down that you will see at the top that directs you to the COVID Relief Grant Fund information. But if you also go under the Advantages tab, you can see our small business innovation entrepreneurship support. And I'll dive into programs really quickly. The first one is California Competes Tax Credit. We just concluded a round. There's 3 rounds in a fiscal year, and the next fiscal year will begin with the first round in the July to August timeframe. This last round had a little over 200 million in that fiscal round. So if you can expect, you know, the next round will be of a similar apportionment, somewhere between north of 170 million within a fiscal year. And there are 3 rounds in its competitive application process. It is an income tax credit available to businesses. You ask what you need in order for you to be successful in the state of California based on the amount of investment, CapEx, and jobs that you are placing within your opportunity. So it is also used as an attraction, expansion, and retention tool. So CalCompetes looks at those projects that says, you know, if not for this incentive and other incentives, I would potentially locate out of state at California, close my operation, or, you know, I would choose to expand elsewhere, or I would choose to not come to California. So it's really used to tie to those different milestones and achievements. Very flexible income tax credit. You can hold it, use it year to year, so on and so forth. And I just typed in, you know, for example, city of industry nearby. CalCompetes is great. They have a really easy portal. You can type in Riverside, Moreno Valley, Paris, Hemet, San Jacinto, Palm Springs, every city in Riverside County, and I guarantee you'll find a CalCompetes awardee. And so there are CalCompetes awardees in every city, and you can go to the awardee list on their website. You can see what was the net increase of full-time employees, how much did they request in a form of a tax credit from the state of California, and when were they receive the award, and, you know, how much of that money have they utilized. So there's lots of great examples throughout the state. Another one is Timely. Right now, it aligns with opportunity zones. So there are designated geographic areas that provide a income tax credit for new employees if they are recent recipient of unemployment, if they are veteran, earned EITC recipient, ex-offender, convicted of felony, CalWORKs, general assistance. You know, there's a lot of different categories, and there's designated geographic areas that also are overlay with opportunity zones very heavily, where these new hires can take place. What this does is provide you as a business with an income tax credit up to 35% of that employee's wages over 5 years for that hire. So if you're considering a lot of Americans have been on unemployment, this is an opportune time to utilize this tax credit for that new hiring window that you have. And considering that a lot of the designated census tracts within the state of California directly fall on many of the opportunity zone census tracts, you can probably expect that if you're a business in an opportunity zone, you can use the new employment credit. So there are a lot of folks within Southern California, and they do have a list on their website of sample businesses who have used the new employment credit as well. The #1 user in the state is PG&E, so it's a very interesting fact. So the next is one that I wanted to just highlight for businesses now. It's not a tax credit, but this is one that is available to Southern California and Southern California Edison that aligns with CalCompetes. So attraction, expansion, retention, and basically saying, if not for this incentive and other incentives, I would choose not to expand. I maybe choose not to come to California. I maybe would choose to close, or I'd expand my 50 jobs and 10 million in CapEx as a small business elsewhere. And so it is a 12% reduction on your utility bill over 5 years. It's non-competitive. You just apply through Edison for this. They review you, and then they submit it to us at GoBiz, and we give final approval for these projects and awards. So there's lots of businesses within Riverside County who have utilized the economic development rate, as Rob Moran, I'm sure, can attest to. So it isn't one that I want to say that is one that is applicable to really to that expansion word. So expanding in opportunity zones. If you're thinking about expanding into an opportunity zone, you're considering going somewhere else, utilize an economic development rate to lower your utility costs. We operate the State Opportunity Zone website, which is currently undergoing a complete remodel with the California Opportunity Zone logo that you can see on the right-hand side. And so we have a sign-up sheet that you can sign up for more information where we're providing new updates through that website once it has redesign and complete redo. And so you can also use this website to find the map where opportunity zones are. The one thing I wanted to just double down on is Stacy's point about program leverage. The incentive has really changed, and that is really a testament to someone who I saw in the audience, whose name is Eric Yost, who has really been a large advocate across federal agencies to align preferential pointing, consideration, and elevation for projects that apply for federal opportunities in opportunity zones. So, 330 plus federal grants and programs for that preferential pointing consideration. I use the example here of a community who went to go for a brownfields cleanup grant and a broadband grant. But this is a community example, but the same applies to businesses, as you can see on many of the list of the opportunities that are available. And so this is really something that has changed. The incentive was first a tax incentive, and now it is a tax incentive and an ability to elevate your capacity to go for federal funding. So think of it as a two-pronged way. So just wanted to double down that, there's also this option too. And that's where you can see that the Biden administration under DOT offered this, infrastructure financing grant. And here I highlighted, consideration whether a project is located in community development zone, OZs, empowerment zones. So you see a lot of this language, and you also can be able to see on the federalgrants.gov, there's a click button where you can select and see the open opportunities that have opportunity zone consideration. We have the California Grants Portal, that's grants.ca.gov. This was launched in the last year. So folks often ask, where can I find grant opportunities at the state? We have a one place to go for grants, grants.ca.gov, and you can also see forecasted and previous opportunities that have been listed through the state to give you an idea if there might be something forecasted in the future that you can use. And I also put this one on there with the link at the top. We have an Office of Planning and Research that provides a weekly list that is very easy to digest with pictures for federal grants. So it's a great resource to utilize and to be opined to. They also have several week workshops coming up in April. They have 3 coming up in the next 2 months, which you could find here on the page on how to apply for federal grants, how to be ready to apply for federal grants, how to be privy to new federal grant opportunities. So our Office of Planning and Research is really being a free resource to provide consultancy to folks who want to learn how to go to federal grants. So I really encourage folks to go check out their federal assistance page. The governor's proposed budget includes a lot for businesses, elevation, increase of tax credits, increase of different funding vehicles for small business. As Michael discussed, there's conversations about expanding financing and loan capabilities to our financial development corporations to be able to provide more capital to small businesses. And then we also have a expansion of CalCompetes and the inclusion in the governor's budget for a CalCompetes grant program. So a grant program in addition to the tax credit that we have. As you can see, some of these actions have already been moved. But if there is to be the moved budget, we can expect a lot of the things on this list. So there's a lot to look forward to. I included all the things that I think that are good to sign up based on my presentation here. Follow us on Twitter and our sign up list. And then of course, my contact information again, and reach out at any time. Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you, Trey, for your presentation. I think as everyone can see, you know, the state of California really has a plethora of support for our businesses, and we want to make sure to utilize them in and outside of our opportunity zones. However, in our opportunity zones, we're lucky enough to have you as our dedicated liaison. Folks can see how knowledgeable you are, and we want to make sure and take advantage of all the resources that you provided. So if anyone should want contact information or to follow up, Trey will be happy to do so. And at this time, we can go to a couple of questions. If folks want to add anything, I think we have about 6 minutes left, so we'll try to get through as many as we can. But I guess I'll just kick it back to the incentives portion of things, since that's where we just ended. And maybe I'll kick it to you, Rob, and to Trey. Being that you have so many resources available at the county level, at the state level, what do you see is the most underutilized? What should people be using more that can, you know, benefit the opportunity zones? And what do you see people, hey, they are taking advantage of and should definitely make sure it includes? So either one of you can kick it off, but.
I'll kick it off from the local end. Thanks, Stacy. And I would say probably reach out to your local officials and I know that's not necessarily a specific incentive but make sure you reach out to your local official, whether it's at the county or the city level, because oftentimes there's either programs or services that you're not aware of at that level, or there's things that are happening in the surrounding community that could be very impactful, positively, and sometimes negatively, but positively, you know, for what you're going to invest in. So I would say just reach out to your local economic development officials, like I said, at the city or the county level. And then one of the things that I would add to this is, and I don't remember exactly who mentioned it, but there's the America Rescue Plan program. There's going to be a ton of money going to federal departments, states, and local jurisdictions as well, to varying degrees. And I think that, you know, I can speak from the county side, that we want to look at making strategic investments in different communities that help facilitate private sector growth and development. A year ago with CARES, it was, I think, a slightly different approach, because we were essentially in lockdown mode, and it was really crisis triage response. And now I think with the ARP money and where we're going with basically completely reopening, fingers crossed, right, Trey? June 15th, but moving out of, you know, any kind of, or for the most part, you know, any tiered system whatsoever, and pray that there's no spikes or surges, is that, you know, we're not looking at it so much from a triage or emergency response standpoint. We're really looking at using this money for strategic investments. So there could be ways that haven't even been identified yet to partner together, especially in opportunity zone communities, which are precisely the target of both the states and local communities and the federal ARP money. So I would say, you know, if you don't ask, you don't get, and explore those opportunities with your local communities and where you're considering investing. So hope that helps.
Thank you, Rob. And I really want to give some credit to you and your team. All of your staff are super responsive to any questions. There's a number of resources under the county Economic Development Agency. You can see the website again at rivcooz.com. They have a revolving loan program, for example. There's a number of grant products. So there's a number of things that the county has at their level, in addition to different resources at the city level, that I encourage folks to take advantage of.
Yeah, thank you.
I see a question in the chat box. Maybe I'll throw this to Patrick, since you're the investor on the team. You might have some tips. Any tips for small businesses that are located in a qualified opportunity zone and seeking financing from a qualified opportunity fund?
Yeah, no, I saw the question, and I think it's a really good one, because I think often what you'll hear as a small business owner is that the intent of this legislation is to democratize kind of the world of private finance for areas that do not often get it, or sectors like small business that are often overlooked. But if you get into the mechanics of a fund that is managing a whole bunch of deferred tax dollars, where those investors actually have to pay the tax in 2026, as we heard, and then ultimately have to hold for 10 years to really kind of see the true upside of the benefit, sometimes they start looking at a small business and they might say the risk is misaligned in that. They might be like, well, wait a minute, there's risk in a small business. If you go under in 2 or 3 years, I'm going to be left losing all the money I made in my investment, and I'll still have this deferred tax I have to pay. So there's some real barriers that I think exist kind of in that ecosystem. And some of the advice I would give would be, really understanding, kind of the pathway your small business is on. Are you aligned with someone who's seeking to kind of maximize their appreciation of capital over the next 10 years? Is this really kind of the hockey stick growth that you may see? Or are you a little bit more of a stable growth small business? And if it's the latter, are there other areas you could try and de-risk that investment from the investor side, whether it's, partnering with federal agencies who are making grant dollars available from some of this new American Rescue Plan Act dollars, like the EDA or the SBA? Could you look to align yourself with some of the more qualified small business stock or QSBS type kind of mechanism? So really just, thinking about it not just as, hey, I'm a business, I'm in a zone, I want to find a QOF, but how do you align yourself with whoever that QOF is to say, I'm going to try to actively take a role in de-risking this investment, and I'm going to actively align my business with what I know your interests are. And that's not always an easy conversation to have. I think we're trying to lean in to really be in these communities and help kind of lead out on that. So I'd be happy to do a follow-up conversation, but that would be my kind of quick high level answer to it.
Awesome. Thank you, Patrick. And Sheila, I'll just also add, we want to define what you mean by small business as well, because there are different categories, and we want to make sure that we're addressing this the right way. If you join us on our next panel, on next Wednesday, for example, there is an investor that will be joining that invests specifically in startups. So you can see that there are different flavors and different investment profiles across investors. We want to make sure that we're connecting you to the right folks and to the right resources. You see a number of resources that we've had on this panel in and of itself, investment and otherwise, and happy to continue the conversation. I can be reached at opportunityriverside.com here in Riverside County, providing resources as well as technical assistance and advisory. So please do feel free to reach out. And I hope that folks join us on our next panel next Wednesday. I know we're at time, so if folks want to, anyone on the panel, any last words or any final parting resources? Okay, I'm getting affirmations. I think you've seen all of the company websites, and please feel free to reach out and join us again on next Wednesday at 1 p.m. for our founders panel, founders that are raising an opportunity zone and have raised, so you can hear from firsthand experiences. Thank you so much to our panelists.
Thank you, Stacy, for organizing and doing this, and thank you also, Rob, and Riverside County.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Steve, Michael, Rob. Thank you, everyone from Riverside County. And
thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Stacy.